Are they under the impression that you're playing football regularly?
They should do
All right, I'm going to call the 10th meeting of the 14th Undergraduate Senate to order. I will begin by calling roll. Senator Flores.
Here.
Senator Rodriguez.
Here.
Senator Hayashi. Senator Max Robbins.
Here.
Senator Newlander. Senator Jenkins. Senator Jacobs. Senator Ossip. Senator Adams. Senator Abisakara. Senator Perez. Senator Sellinger. Senator Zitzman. Senator Tercios. Senator Menashe. Senator Giesler. Senator Butler. Senator Luthra. Senator Jacob Robbins.
Present.
Okay, quorum is met. We will move to the adoption of the agenda. Any discussion on the current agenda? Senator Zitzman.
I'd like to add the resolution I sent you to the end of new business.
Okay.
And I sent that to, I think, every member of the Senate who's here, but if I didn't, you didn't mention it.
Do all relevant parties have it as well?
The board has it, sent it to Brian.
Okay.
I feel like that's everybody.
Okay, cool.
I have it too.
Okay. Any other discussion on the agenda? Seeing none, it will be adopted without objection. Moving to adoption of the minutes to the 9th meeting, which were sent to you. Yes, Senator Zitzman.
I'd like to have the minutes corrected for Sven's name spelled incorrectly. Tinashe.
Let me pull this up.
I think every instance of it. Oh, there's only one instance of it.
Which is where?
See,
Oh, there it is. I see it.
it's under the signature bill.
Okay. Any other amendments to the meeting minutes? Seeing none, without objection, will be adopted. All right, moving to public comment. Any member of the public wishing to speak at this time? Seeing none, we'll move to reports from officers. First is Secretary Bailey.
Hi, everyone. I don't have a visual presentation today, not a fancy one like last time, but in the effort to be quick and efficient, I'm just going to run through some things and then answer questions and move on to the rest of the items in the agenda today that you guys have ready. So first, I talked to you last time about putting together the student government directory, which had been in the bylaws but never really been completed before. That is now complete and live on the website under the government tab. You can see it has everyone that is in student government currently in all branches, and everything is filled out to the best of like our ability. Not everyone has like posted office hours throughout student government, but that's fine, I think, due to their positions and time constraints. And I'm looking at ways to sort of make that visually look better. I know it's in a Google Doc right now, or a Google Sheet. But in the effort of putting it up there as fast as possible, that's what we have right now. Next, another item in the bylaws that was completed this week was promoting that last Friday was Workers' Appreciation Day. American University retweeted our tweet about that, which was awesome. So shout out to the, I think, 15-16 Senate on that one for putting that in Founders happened. Our communications have been great around that. That team worked hard on putting that together flawlessly. We just received all of the photos, which will be released most likely tomorrow. So keep an eye on Facebook and tag your friends in those fancy photos there. We put out a video for a promotional video for the classroom bias event last week to get as many students there as possible. It was a really good event. I'm sure Val will talk about that. But from a promotional side, we got a few thousand views on that, which really, I think, really pushed us over the edge in terms of attendance. Also, in terms of budget conversations, the executive board put out a video, sort of what our thoughts were and what our decisions were going into the board meeting, which I think gave people a lot of good context on what we were discussing and sort of peeling back like that secret SG thing. What are people talking about on the board? Like it's literally just us saying what we're saying to you right now. As you all pretty much know, elections are here, and it was sort of a quick turnaround in terms of getting dates confirmed with Ayanna Wilson, the Director of Student Activities, but Iman has been great in organizing and presenting all that information. There's 2 more info sessions coming up. One is today, one's tomorrow, and then campaigning begins. Exciting times. And then 2 more things here, updates on things I discussed last time. Transition meetings, we're being really thoughtful about how we want to transition the next e-board and directors and such. So we're really having conversations now about what those meetings will look like, because I don't think there was like those full meetings last year at all. So if you have any thoughts on that, shoot me an email and let me know. And then finally, the transition brunch will most likely be this Sunday before May 1st, like it's the 28th or 29th, and we'll coordinate to make sure that all of you can attend as well and discuss awards and end of year recaps and that sort of thing. So that is all I have right now. If you have any questions, I can answer, but that's as quick as I could go today.
Questions for the secretary? Seeing none, thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Moving to President Fernandez.
Hey all, also don't have a presentation and we'll keep it super short. Mainly here to answer questions. First of all, good morning. I hope everyone's doing really well. It's been a while since I see a lot of you. But just to expand on what Alex was saying around the classroom bias event, it was a really successful event. There was a nice mix between law school students and undergraduate students, and this is a collaborative project that every student government president has really been trying to do for years, so it was nice to see it come to fruition. But most importantly, I think the really key takeaways were, one, that the provost was there, the newly selected provost, and he's directly in charge of policies and oversight of faculty, etc. Vice provost and intern provost before Dan came in. Mary Clark was also in attendance, Dr. All was there, and the law school dean was also there. So it was a great event with great turnout, and all of the recommendations that came out from the event were being typed throughout the entirety and are going to be referred back to the President's Council on Diversity and Inclusion during the coming days. So shout out to anyone that was able to attend. The next thing, I just kind of want to recap a little bit about how the Board of Trustees meeting went this last week within the confidentiality that I still have to abide by right now until the chairman of the board releases the memo to the campus community. And I'm happy once that's done to expand on anything you read there, or even to just add a little bit more nuance, because I do realize it's pretty short. So first of all, just to provide some general context, so the way the Board of Trustees meetings work, it's on Thursday, it's committee meetings, and then Friday, it's the at-large Board of Trustees meeting. So on Thursday, there's all different sorts of committees. The ones that the student government president sits on is the Campus Life Committee, the Academic Affairs Committee, the Finance and Investment, sorry, no, just kidding. That was me as student trustee. So Campus Life, Academic Affairs, Alumni and Development, and I think that's it, right? Yes. So that's student government president. Secretary sits on the Communications Board Committee. Vice President sits on the Athletics Board Committee, and then Comptroller sits on the Board Finance and Investment Committee. As far as other student representation throughout all of this, the student trustee-elect and the student trustee sit on the campus life committee, academic affairs, communications, and finance and investment, just to give you some context. So I'll specifically highlight what went on, what the conversation looked like in the campus life committee, since that's most relevant to you all. But essentially, I referred them to my report, and the main two things that I talked about were around college affordability and AUX. So in college affordability, I gave some context to all of the trustees as to what had been happening with the proposed meal plan. I basically stated how there's a $2,000 increase, and then how once that happened, all of the energy around college affordability was directed towards the fact that this was a budget year, and provided some context around what the conversation on campus was looking like, as well as the three things that as a student government we're specifically advocating for. And those three things were an increased tuition discount rate, more funding for the emergency fund for students with unforeseen circumstances, and specific support for student support services, and of course, in addition, the lowest tuition increase possible within the range that they had been given. So we had a really expansive conversation about that. Our friends at RHA are also at the Thursday Campus Life Committee. So Jared even added on more context to the dining conversation, and it really ended up becoming a conversation about the quality of dining, with our contractors, how we could, trustees were asking campus departments on how they were going to specifically be responding to the demand for healthier options and the quality and more variety of food options on campus. So it was a pretty in-length discussion. It also turned into a discussion, thanks to our friends at RHA, about housing occupancy rates and how students felt about living on campus, both the cost barriers that came to it, as well as the quality barriers, such as maintenance. Why do you choose to live on campus versus living at the Ave, 20 minutes down, 5 minutes away, when you can save $1,000, it's probably $1,000 more expensive, but split it amongst a couple more people and you don't have no mice running around. So they had that conversation. We also talked expansively about AUX and sort of the concerns I've been hearing from students around AUX 1, the lack of rigor in the academic side, sort of how it feels like busy work. We talked about like the intentions versus the impact that it's actually having on students, and how that's then impacting the perception of students going into AUX 2, both in terms of community, both in terms of perception, both in terms of the quality that they think they're receiving in their coursework. So that was Thursday, and I'm happy to talk about any of the other committees if you have specific questions. Then Friday, just as a reminder, so the way it's set up is that the trustees all sit in the middle, and then on the side table, on one table, it's the president's cabinet, and then on the other table, it's the student representatives. So the people that sit in the middle are all of the trustees and President Burwell, and this includes the student trustee. And then on the sidelines, it's the alumni board president, a representative from the faculty senate, the GOC president, student bar association president, student government president, and student trustee elect, who is shadowing the student trustee. And then essentially during Friday, you can chime in on the conversation if you're called upon, if you're a student representative, but if not, you don't speak until you give your board report. So during my board report, I again emphasize the same two things I did during the campus life committee, particularly focusing in on the college affordability piece. And second, I also took the time to share some brief reflections with the board. As many of you may know, I have actually been with the board since my freshman year, and I will be graduating this May. So I shared sort of my reflections, having been with them for 4 years now, and really spoke candidly to them to think critically about the types of questions they're asking to get to the core of campus life, who has access to the boardroom and who's receiving their mentorship, and how we can all push a little bit stronger on how we think about the complex intersecting identities that students have, and how that impacts their student experience during their time at AU. So pretty in-length report, and I'm happy to answer questions. As far as outcomes, here's what I will say, and you'll read about it more in detail when the memo comes out, and I'm also happy to come back and expand on it a bit more. All of the things that on my end I have been advocating in the boardroom since October, May even, are reflected in the budget. there is an increase in financial aid. It is the lowest tuition increase compared to what the range was and compared to the peer institutions within this budget cycle. There was money set aside for emergency funding, and I don't want to get into what was prioritized and what is prioritized with the budget, but it's all focused around the strategic plan. And the strategic plan around the part of student experience has a large focus on wellness, retention, and aside from that, a large focus on getting some of this budget aside to make sure that we're diversifying revenue to become less tuition dependent. In addition to that, there was also a percentage earmarked from the budget specifically for gapping. So for upper class students whose an increase in tuition might leave them with an $1,000 gap, there's a certain amount of money that was allocated specifically for those instances. So as a whole, I just want to say this, look, I know a lot of conversations have been happening around the budget and what we should be advocating for or not. And I think they all matter. I think all different pressure points are important, but again, the conversations, they were happening a year ago, not 2 days ago. Call that condescending, I call that the truth. So happy to expand on anything based on that. And then of course, elections are coming up. If you have any questions, if you're thinking about running for president or any of the e-board roles, I'm happy to chat and provide some context, because there's a lot that you can see on the outside, but there's a lot that goes on behind the scenes that's really hard to communicate. Thank you. Any questions?
Danya?
Thank you. And I just want to point out that that's me inside the boardroom, but Sarem is the one that sits on the university budget committee. And I'll add this, I've said this several times, the report that Sarem and Bobby created last year was used as a framework on how the committee approached college affordability. And that was really like the word kept them being brought up during the board meeting. And it wasn't because students were there, because they know me, they weren't trying to pander, but really they were focused on college affordability. There's always more to be done, but I just want to emphasize that.
Bobby?
Can you tell us how much the tuition discount rate went up?
It was 3%. Overall, it was 2.5% or around that range.
So the increase was 3% or? Okay.
Yeah.
Max?
Okay, slightly loaded question. So again, thank you for coming here, and obviously, I said thank you for all the work that you put into this. So given your experience with the board over the past 4 years, I imagine you can kind of gauge the way they lean on matters such as tuition increases. So given how tuition dependent we are, given that despite like some pretty decent efforts this year, I'm not sure about the efforts to thwart tuition increases in the past. I know that I think this year they were pretty vocal about it. But do you think that engaging how you view the board, how they've acted, and how you expect them to act in the future, given how tuition dependent we are and how that's not decreasing that much that quickly, is there any real viable chance you believe that there will eventually be a tuition freeze or whatever the terminology is, and that the tuition increase will not take place for freshmen, that just like GW blocks their tuition for 4 years, just like other schools do that? I understand that that's very few schools do that, and the argument of protesters and students' death, colleges' death sentence is not that America should follow everyone else, but rather America should be a trendsetter.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think that in the next 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, do you have any idea, if ever, that this will take place?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think this is the first year that I really see the trustees being candid about all of the problems associated with the tuition increase, like very vocally. And I was really happy to see that. I think the answer to your question is I don't know. I think they're making all of the active efforts to get there. And I do think once we're at that place where we're able to have that financial flexibility, that won't be dismissed off the table, because they see the fact that we're tuition dependent as one, awful for students, but two, it's a bad business model, period. So they know that it's a bad business model to stay away from. I can't give you a time frame, but I do I do wholeheartedly believe, based on my experiences, that once we get there to that point, that won't be a question. So yes, I think as far as like to the argument of like being a trendsetter, I think that's important. Like we're AU change makers, we're changing world. Like we can be trailblazers. Like doesn't matter if other universities are increasing, blah blah blah. We're gonna come and like do a freeze and like that's cool. But because everything you said, like we are tuition dependent, we are this and that. If we become like we're gonna be trailblazers, but what's the trade-off? And the trade-off is that the students that actually need the most financial aid are the ones being forgotten in that. Yeah.
Piper?
You mentioned how kind of the budget, everything has been not, just what we've seen publicly in the last month or so, but has been a year-long period. I am wondering what, from your perspective, the effect of the protests and calls to the death sentence has been. Do you think that had an effect on the trustees? What do you see as being the students' voices' role within this process?
Yeah, no, that's a really good question. And like I said, it has been a year-long process. We started an event back in October, did one mid-semester, did one just about a week and a half ago. So the students that show up there are really important. I think the protesters are equally important because they're reminders, they're vocal reminders that this is really important. And a lot of the trustees, like they referenced both the work that we have been doing inside here and the specific asks and how they get to that, but they also alluded to, wow, those are awful like stories that we heard outside. So I think they're all equally important. It's just a matter of leveraging all of the different pressure points. And I think they all play a part.
Curtis?
Thank you so much, Val, for your presentation. I just was wondering if you could comment on how the board of trustees responded to the, I guess, the recommendation from auxiliary services about there being no increase on first-year residents for their meal plan requirement and also second-year residents. So could you just comment on that?
So there wasn't a specific conversation about auxiliary services and the recommendations they put forward. There was a complete consensus that there was much more that could be done to improve the quality of dining and how that should be a priority, one, because it contributes to like how students feel on campus, but two, should also be a priority because if students are living on campus, they're expecting to like they have certain expectations that need to be met. The specific plan that was submitted, it was sort of implied, given like the OCO's proposal of it, that like that was the right direction to go at the time, but there was no explicit conversation about it. Yeah.
So just a quick follow-up. When the board of trustees reviews, I guess, the proposal that was worked in the Office of Campus Life and also the Office of Finance and the Treasurer, I was just wondering, the memo that was sent to all students on February 14th of this year about there being no meal plan increase, did the board of trustees agree?
So again, there wasn't an explicit conversation, but that is what will happen moving forward. There will be no increase.
Bobby?
So I'm gonna say some statements, but since this is question time, I'm also gonna give you your spot at the end to expand or respond or whatever if you want. Max was referring to fixed tuition earlier.
Yeah.
That's the term for that. That's what they do at GW, whereby the same price that you pay the first year, you pay, I think it's either up to 4 or 6 years. And we had a discussion about that in the Undergraduate Senate last year. It ended up in the affordability report that Val mentioned that the University Budget Committee and the Board of Trustees have been taking very seriously. And I will just say that from like basic theoretical economics and from the experience at GW and many other private and public universities, the result of fixed tuition is that prices go up, because if the university has less flexibility to determine how much revenue they get, especially if they're as tuition dependent as American University is, they're going to take the safe route and raise the prices more than they would if they got to see every year to year or every budget cycle how much they need to raise prices. So if you're interested in affordability, I would just caution everyone not to take that as a synonym for fixed tuition, because in reality they're opposites. Fixed tuition, especially at schools like ours, raises prices. So yeah, do you have anything to say about that?
I mean, I completely agree. And this is what I mean with the conversations around college affordability or nuance. Like, they're not black and white. They're not this or that. Everyone at some point has an impact. So, yeah, thank you for sharing that.
Max?
Okay, so on another note, and this is just a question about, dynamics of the board of trustees in general. So, using our Senate as an example, I'm not trying to say that a confirmation process is official. We definitely ask questions, but generally speaking, we trust those who nominate people. When you nominate someone for J board, or Trevor nominates someone for J board, well, we do definitely ask them questions to make sure that they're fine. Almost always they pass unanimously. So what I wonder is when various departments, or let's say the CFO, have to present their proposals to the board. So let's say I understand for the meal plan, although no change was made, like still proposals are brought to the board. As far as how trustees vote on these matters, is it similar to our Senate where when the CFO brings something, the board of trustees, placing high trust in the CFO, will question them, but almost always pass unanimously? Are there defectors among board of trustees members? How does that process work?
Yeah, that's a good question. I'll start off by saying this. Pretty much all of the votes, period, are unanimous. The questions, there are changes that are made throughout the process oftentimes to get to the unanimous vote. And I think while they have complete confidence in the person presenting, they also ask a lot of hard questions that may be of things they didn't receive and expect to have those answers. And if not, there has been times where they're like, can you revisit this specific things? And like, we are okay with this, but only if you can assure us that this is this specific thing is in place. So the answer is it depends. As a whole, pretty high confidence, high level of questioning and like debate, but pretty unanimous votes.
Time for questioning has elapsed. Seeing no motions, thank you. All right, moving to Judicial Board Chair Fu.
Hello, everybody. So as I've done before, every time J Board or I do something, I'm required to come and read it to you. It's not a glamorous part of the job because it's not a whole lot of fun to stand here and read something, and it's not probably a lot of fun to sit there and listen to it. But it's a requirement. So I've got two things to read to you today. One, did they get a copy of the continuation? The one that I sent you?
I don't know. I don't think I forwarded it.
Okay. All right. Cool. Huh?
It's on the website.
Oh yeah, it's on the website. So if you have a look at the website. 0.003 was handed down first on February 26th, and the continuation of Judicial Opinion 14.002 was handed down March 1st. So to start with number 3, pursuant to Article 3, Section 1, Subsection 3 of the Judicial Register, allowing the chair of the Judicial Board to, quote, determine whether to accept or dismiss inquiries based on sufficient merit, and pursuant to Article 3, Section 1, Subsection 1 of the Judicial Register, allowing the chair of the Judicial Board to decide, quote, decide whether an inquiry shall be considered non-binding or binding, as well as whether the decision shall be considered through an informal or formal resolution. And whereas the chair of the Judicial Board received an anonymous inquiry on the 26th of February 2019 concerning the fairness of appointments made. Sorry, I'm going to make this bigger so I can read it. The fairness of appointments made by the director of the Kennedy Political Union regarding whether or not the director unjustly appointed friends to positions as opposed to open applications up to the student body as a whole. Therefore, be it held, the chair dismisses the inquiry on the basis of a lack of evidence to support the charge, as well as an anonymous submission being impossible to adjudicate since there is no complainant. It is so ordered the 26th day of February 2019. So that's the first one. Second one is a continuation of the Adams v. Gladden decision. So pursuant to Judicial Opinion 14.002 Adams v. Gladden, requiring Comptroller Giselle Gladden to comply with the terms of her probation period following the term of her suspension, and pursuant to Judicial Opinion 14.002 Adams v. Gladden, requiring the Judicial Board to convene to discuss further sanctions in the event of a violation of the terms of the probation. And whereas one of the conditions of the probation was the submission to the chair of the Judicial Board as well as the publication of a fiscal activities report for the month of February. And whereas the submission deadline for this report was before March 1st, whereas Comptroller Gladden failed to submit such a report to the chair, and whereas the board convened electronically to discuss and agree on further sanctions compliant with Judicial Opinion 14.002, Adams v. Gladden, therefore be it held that Comptroller Gladden, having been found in violation of the terms of her probation, is hereby resuspended for a period of an additional 2 weeks, beginning at 12 p.m. on March 3rd, so today, and lasting until 12 p.m. on March 17th, 2019. And therefore be it also held that Comptroller Gladden's period of suspension probation shall resume at 12 p.m. on March 17th, 2019, and last until 12 p.m. on April 7th, 2019. And therefore be it also held that Comptroller Gladden shall be expected to meet the same probation requirements as laid out in Judicial Opinion 14.002, with the new deadline of the fiscal activities report being April 1st, and the deadline for the other expectations being April 7th. And therefore be it also held, the board believes Comptroller Gladden has met the requirements set out in the bylaws of what constitutes one of the, quote, causes of impeachment as described in the bylaws, Article 14, Section 4, the cause being, quote, failing to meet the requirements of her position as stated in the Student Government Constitution and Student Government Bylaws, end quote. And therefore be it also held that the Judicial Board, in accordance with the Judicial Register, formally requests from the Undergraduate Senate the impeachment and subsequent removal of Comptroller Gladden from her position as Comptroller of the Student Government. It is so ordered this first day of March 2019. I am expecting a number of questions, so.
All right. Bobby,
Can I ask unanimous consent that every member gets 5 minutes to go back and forth, right?
is there a second?
Second.
I hear a second. Is there discussion on this?
Unanimous consent.
What?
I asked unanimous consent.
I know, but is there discussion on whether or not this motion should be done, yeah?
Because I have a number of questions that I would like to ask, and they go in a sequence, and it's just more efficient. That's what they do in real Congress for a reason.
Discussion on this motion. Seeing none, is there any objection to this motion? Hearing none, it passes. Resent? Okay.
So,
Bobby,
the monthly report, like the fiscal report, was the reason for this new suspension and call for impeachment. Giselle sent me the report on March 1st.
Yeah.
When did you get it?
March 1st.
Okay. So, considering that you got this report, now it wasn't before March 1st like the deadline says, but you got it eventually. Can you give us the judicial board's reasoning for why, of all the things you could do, like just a number of hours after the end of the deadline, you guys automatically said, like, suspend it again and called for impeachment? Considering that there's a wide range of things that you could have done, why, like, within hours, was the decision, let's impeach?
It's a reasonable expectation that the publication of a fiscal report isn't in itself a big deal. If it was the only requirement, it wouldn't be cause for impeachment recommendation and suspension for 2 weeks. The problem was the probation was violated, that 2 weeks were given in suspension, and then 4 weeks were given for probation with 8 days for the report to be put together and submitted to J Board Chair. So it wasn't, again, so much and we could have done other things, but J Board found it reasonable that the suspension be reinstated from the original opinion and then the deadline pushed back. So if you do the math on this, there's 2 weeks for the suspension and then 3 weeks for the probation after that, because she had 1 week of the probation already. So then we're going to count that as part of the probation for the remainder of it. So we're counting in total 4 weeks, as opposed to if we gave her another 4 weeks, it'd be a total of 5 weeks. So we decided that that was fair.
Yeah, so independent of the timing of whenever suspension happens, can you explain why this, like a few hours late in submitting this report right here, was seen as so severe that it would warrant impeachment?
Again, it was the fact that the probation had been violated. It was due before March 1st, so J Board could have issued the opinion at 12:01 a.m.
Yeah,
on March 1st.
Like,
So
you have the ability to do something.
Yeah.
I'm wondering whether it's a good idea. So
we think it is, because we're bound by our decisions and the governing documents to do that kind of stuff. The deadline in the bylaws is before the first of every month. So if it's not met before then, it's not met. It's not a, well, there's a couple hours before, there's a window here of it can be submitted a couple hours after the 1st of March. It's either before the 1st of March or the 1st of the month, or it's not.
So I appreciate that there are like requirements that we all have in bylaws. But I think 100% everybody misses some of their requirements. Like you and I think people would agree take our jobs very diligently. But like when I call meetings of the finance committee, I don't always put, or ever actually put the prerequisite announcement on social media for a number of days. And you're J board chair, but you haven't come to all of our meetings to act as acting parliamentarian. So we all do this weighing job when we're evaluating each other's performances and how well we meet the requirements of the governing documents. So given this specific violation of the governing documents and submitting this report a few hours late, like why is impeachment, like after a few hours, automatically what you went to, as opposed to like say, hey, Giselle, you're behind the deadline, you've got 24 hours to hand this in, or whatever other thing like impeachment. And then just one more question is, after like you tell us why impeachment, was there any consideration of like as an organization that has an image problem and recognizing that that image problem impairs all of our abilities to do our work, like was there any consideration of how this would look in like the season of the year when we have the most intense observation of our organization during an executive election to have an impeachment hearing going on at the same time? But was there any consideration of that as well?
So I'll address your first part, why the cause of impeachment was the first part. It was because we had already handed down sanctions on this issue that we were going to be we weren't going to be stricter. We were going to be more diligent in observing the terms of probation. So because this was a second chance kind of thing, there was more scrutiny under that they be met. So it was the culmination of the 6 original violations and then a 7th violation. And one of them was a repeat of one of the first 6. So we think that meets the requirement for, because the bylaws say failure to meet, and the Constitution says it too, failure to meet the requirements of the position as stated, and so that was our thinking behind that. Quickly remind me what your second question was, because I lost
Was there any
it.
consideration?
Oh, the image. We talked about that actually. We can't allow the image of the organization to affect our work because it's then biased. All we can go off of is governing documents. That's the only thing we have authority to. And I think you said something about like you have 24 hours to do this. We don't have the authority to extend the deadlines in the bylaws either. All we can do is set up that she had until this deadline in accordance with the bylaws to do this. So we wouldn't have the authority to add to the bylaws to say, well, you've got 24 hours after the deadline was required.
Do I have any remaining time?
No more time.
Okay.
Jacob?
Thank you for being here, Brian. I understand this is not something you enjoy doing, nor is it something that's perhaps the most glamorous or easy parts of your job. So thank you for coming and doing it. My question is just simply, what kinds of communications did you have with the comptroller leading up to the March 1st deadline? Like how many notifications were given saying like, there's this deadline that's coming up? I'm just curious about that.
Yeah, so an email was sent on February 20th, like 5 minutes after noon, saying, or this not new deadline, but the deadline is coming up. They laid out, this is due March, it did each item. It did March 1st is the fiscal activities report, March 22nd, and the other ones are March 22nd. So that was given. There wasn't any follow-up to that because it was assumed that the opinion was enough notification, and then another email afterwards wasn't even warranted, but it was given. So there wasn't any follow-up after that. The deadline was 8 days after that email was sent.
Did the comptroller reach out to you regarding any kinds of like I guess what I'm trying to ask is, it sounds kind of silly, but was the deadline that was given on or before, or it was very specifically before March 1st?
It was specific in the opinion and in the email, it was before March 1st.
But not on March 1st.
Not on March 1st, no.
I don't know if I can eliminate my time to bother you.
That's possible.
I'll yield my time.
The rest of your time?
The
The rest of your time?
A minute of my time.
A minute of your time. Okay.
But just the one thing I had extra is that you said like you can only like have the deadlines that you do in the bylaws and you can't extend them or modify them at your whim. As far as I know, the bylaws only say that these reports have to be published monthly, and I don't think they specify that the February report can't be published on March 1st.
It does say before the first of the month.
Okay.
Yeah.
But in any case, I think like that since you guys were setting these deadlines in the first place as a feature of the probation, I think it would be reasonable that says, since like this is part of the probation, which is at your discretion, that you can modify it. But I don't really have any more questions. So thank you, Jacob.
So I'll respond to that. So because the probation was in line with and under the authority of the judicial register, and the register is authorized by the bylaws, we had to set I'm sure we would have liked to set the date for the physical activities report with the rest of the end of the probation, because it just logically makes sense for all the things to be done then. But the judicial register doesn't give us the authority to change deadlines like that are set out specifically, because the judicial register is not formally a governing document. It's a policy book. The bylaws is a governing document in the Constitution. The only thing that outweighs it is the Constitution. So the deadline for that, the probation's not listed in the judicial register. The register doesn't say you can do probations, but it doesn't say you can't, and it says you can do anything so long as it doesn't remove a person. So the probation was in line with the register's authority. Changing the deadline that was laid out in a document that outweighs it as a governing document wasn't listed in the register. The register doesn't have the authority for us to change governing documents. Yeah.
Other questions? Seeing none, thank you. Okay, a few things. As an update, because spring break is coming up, we will not have a meeting for the next 2 weeks. So our next currently scheduled Senate meeting is the 24th, which is Sunday the 24th. Something else to be aware of is Wednesday the 27th, we will be having our first special meeting to certify election results. So be aware of that. Please keep that on your calendar. It'll probably be probably 6 o'clock that Wednesday, something around that time. I sent some few quick requests to a couple individuals regarding like clarification for legislative agenda wording, and so I'm finalizing that, and hopefully we'll get that published eventually. But like obviously, like I said before, like keep doing the work that you wish to do regardless of one, what you put in the legislative agenda, and two, regardless of when it's published, because it's just a transparent document basically to show what we're focused on, but definitely keep working on things outside of that. And then it is a goal of mine to have the 2 campus at large seats that are open, have a nominee for those at our next Senate meeting. Also, hopefully, if there's any applications for the 2021 senator seat open, and then any other Senate seats that are open. I'm trying to get as many nominations as those as possible. Also, like Secretary Bailey said, be aware of the elections timeline that has started. The first info session was yesterday, the last one's tomorrow, which means petitions are going to start after tomorrow for signatures. The nomination convention is Sunday evening after like the last Sunday of spring break, so the 17th. And then voting is the last week of March, with the 27th being the final day. So keep all that in mind. It's going to be a very busy month, even with spring break sort of breaking that up for us. And then I think that's it. I forwarded an email from Raphael to everyone last week regarding CDI training. Raphael told me that only like 9 people filled that out. So if you have your computer open right now and you didn't fill out the survey or the when to meet, then please do that now. Because we're not going to waste CDI's time if no one's going to respond to their requests. And oh gosh, I have one more. Oh yeah. So then after this meeting, I will be sending an email to everyone regarding updates from you all. So you will have a deadline by the end of this week to send me an update on what things you're working on and what additional support that you need, because I want to get a check-in before spring break. And then besides that, I think we're going to keep moving along. Any questions for me, Piper?
The thing on March 27th, senators have to be there.
Yes. It's going to be like another meeting. Yeah.
We don't have quorum, the elections fall apart.
True.
Yeah, I just have work.
Yeah, I'm giving almost a whole month ahead of time, so keep that evening open. Max,
You find
6 p.m. 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. at least. It's on a Wednesday. Yep. So, yeah, because that needs to happen because we need quorum to certify elections. Or decertify. Other questions? Great. Also, no one leave, because if one more person leaves, we're out of quorum. So you're all stuck here now, unless you can reach out to any senator who hasn't been here yet and drag them in. Suspended as of recently? No. Yeah. But we'll see how that goes after this week. Anyway, okay. Moving on to yes. Question. Yes. Yes. Yeah. You just can't leave. Like you can't leave. Like entirely. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So moving to CRP. CRP met before this. As you can see on the agenda. Actually, I forgot to update this. That was tabled, so that's not. Okay, so we have a confirmation hearing for the final associate members for the judicial board and a reconfirmation hearing. Both were favorably recommended by the committee to full Senate. And then the bill 18-19-003 regarding signatures was discussed and tabled for another meeting because there's more work to be done on that. Questions for CRP? Great. Okay. Moving to new business. First, the confirmation of Heyman Wong to be an associate member of the Judicial Board. The floor is now yours.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Heyman Wong, and before I jump into more formal introductions, I wanted to just thank everyone for your time and your consideration. It's an incredible honor to be nominated and appointed by President Friendly, a first-year undergraduate student majoring in communications, legal institutions, economics, and government. I'm also pursuing a minor in information systems and technology. So I know that that's a lot of words getting thrown at you guys at once. So the gist of it is my main passions are law and administration, and I have a growing interest and passion to pursue the understanding of intersectionality of law and technology. So speaking about why and when I applied to J-Board, I applied back in fall, and the main reason that I applied was I wanted to be part of a community that was authentically dedicated to its mission. Now, as you guys know, the J-Board is authentically dedicated to its mission of objectively reviewing and applying the governing documents. So seeing that was the main reason I wanted to apply. If I were to be confirmed to be an associate member of the Judicial Board, some of my main priorities would be bringing impartiality, authenticity, and mainly objectivity and and also just consensus building to the overall judicial board. So moving into some of my previous experience that qualifies me for the position. So back in high school, I was the first female president of my high school's nationally ranked parliamentary debate team. And I bring this up because under my leadership, I had us join the National Parliamentary Debate League. My high school was actually the 10th signing member onto the National Parliamentary Debate League's new constitution, making us the member that ratified that new constitution. So that basically just goes to show that I have experience with high level oversight and also just experience from the beginning of constitution and legislations all the way up to the end. More relevant to you all, I'm also currently appointed as the chair of the Rules and Oversight Committee of the RHA, so Residence Hall Association. As chair of my committee, my main goal is building consensus. So that means whether we receive investigation requests, new legislation drafts, or anything like that, I ask all of my members of my committee to submit or share their personal opinions on it before I give mine as chair. So that being said, I hope that you guys will give me the opportunity to serve as the associate member of the Judicial Board, and I thank you for all of your time. I yield any remaining time to questions.
Questions, Piper?
I was hoping you could just talk again about what you said in CRP about the commitment you want to bring to this role.
Absolutely. So my personal philosophy as a leader is I don't want to take on commitments that I am unsure if there's even a hint of hesitation in my ability to fully fulfill or commit to that role. I would rather not take it. That being said, my only commitments for this upcoming semester and for in the next few years to come that I can see are pretty much just RHA, and I'm in SPA leadership. So my commitments are pretty low and I can fully commit to this position.
Sean?
Hi, so just to reiterate what I asked you in CRP, could you just discuss your familiarity with the governing documents as well as the judicial board hearing process?
Yeah, so I'm going to talk about the judicial board hearing process first. From my understanding, I will always defer back to the documents before submitting a more formal response, just so as to not misinform anyone. But in general, we hear any complaints or any issues that are filed, and the chair gets to ultimately write the opinion. Any other details, I would probably want to wait until I have more context about how everything runs. In terms of the governing documents, I believe the order is the Constitution, which provides the main overlying standards of our mission. The bylaws go into that in more specific ways. The next would be the rules of debate and decorum, which basically just outlines the procedure for our Senate meetings. Then it would be ethical and judicial standards, and that basically just describes what people can and shouldn't say in their general day-to-day goings. Then I believe it would be the parliamentarian authority on previous rulings, which basically just provides precedent that the judicial board can review and use. And then last would be the standard code of procedure. And that basically just goes over all of the procedures that we need here. Yeah.
Tanya?
So do you see yourself staying in this role as your time progresses? I don't know which grade you're in, but like in your leftover years?
Yeah, I mean, I touched a bit upon this earlier when someone else asked that question. I am going to say that it is my full intention to stay as long as possible. Of course, if things change along the way, I can't really speak to that now. But yeah, it is my full intention to stay. Mm-hmm.
Further questions? Seeing none, thank you. If you wouldn't mind leaving the room. Tanya?
Like a great candidate. I really like the experience she has in the past in high school. It seems like she's dedicated to being an objective member of the Duty Board, and I think she would be a great addition as the last person to be added.
Sean?
Yeah, so just going off that and what I said in CRP, I know him from SP leadership, she's phenomenal, she's very passionate about the concepts that she's interested in, and she'll approach it with objectivity and clarity, and she's excellent at that. And if there's no objections, I would like to move to recommend the nomination with unanimous consent.
I hear a second. Is there any objection? Seeing none, she is confirmed. You're all set. You're good.
Okay.
Welcome to the J Board. Well, I mean, okay. The thing is, I don't remember swearing in the other associate members.
Did I
swear you in?
And Eric got sworn in.
Did he? Okay. Oh, wait, but
He swore me and him in at the same time. I think.
I didn't do Layla. That's okay.
It's a good photo opportunity.
Yeah.
This is so exciting.
Do you know the oath of office off the top of your head?
By this point, I could recite most of it, but I'm not about to mess an oath up. So, please raise your right hand and repeat after me. Go down front. Get you on the live stream. There we go. Okay. Please raise your right hand and repeat after me. Alex got it. I say your name, do solemnly swear
I, Heman Wong, do solemnly swear
that I will diligently and faithfully
that I will diligently and faithfully
execute the duties and responsibilities
execute the duties and responsibilities
of the office of Associate Member of the Judicial Board.
of office of the Associate Member of the Judicial Board,
That I will abide by the governing documents
that I will abide by the governing documents
of the student government,
of the student government,
and I will work to my fullest abilities
and I will work to my fullest abilities
to promote the interest and welfare
to promote the interests and welfare
of the students of American
of
University.
the students of American University.
Congratulations. And you know most of it. Yes, we got it. We got all five. Finally. Now we just need to fill in 11 Senate seats. Okay. Moving to the reconfirmation hearing of Alex Russo, Associate Member of the Judicial Board. The floor is yours.
Hello, everybody. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Alex Russo. I am a second-year student here at AU, majoring in CLEG, minoring in public administration and policy. I was originally confirmed to be an associate member last September by the last Senate. I'm very involved on campus. I'm the vice president of AU College Democrats, the vice president of the Zeta Beta Tau fraternity. And I will tell you that a lot of the experience I get from that is in working between different parties in the organization to arbitrate issues that could arise. And I can tell you that in those experiences, I've learned how to deal with different personalities. I've learned how to put aside my biases and my personal feelings to look into the issue objectively. And I think you've seen that in how I've operated as an associate member and J Board at the hearing with Giselle Gladden, obviously, at different issues arising with requests for Brian to accept charges. He's a very collaborative chair. So when he would get an email, as you just heard today, about the KPU issue, he would talk to us before that would happen, and we would be able to give our insight and our input on that and play out, hey, what would a hearing look like? What evidence is there? And try to give our best advice. And we've had a lot of opportunities to push ourselves to be objective, to just look at the governing documents, not to think about what's right or what's fair or what should be in the law, but what is the current law. And that sometimes is a very difficult line to cross because, and as I told CRP, maybe the Constitution should be changed, but that's not up for us to decide. And so it's very difficult to make these decisions and consider fairness, but at the end of the day, what the governing documents are have to come first. So I'm very proud of my ability to have done that so far. I'm known as somebody who can look objectively at an issue and then play devil's advocate to my own personal opinion and just play that in my head and make sure that, does this sound right? Does this make sense? And you guys asked Brian's decision. And unfortunately, we can't do that because if we do that, that means we're inputting biases. And so it's very important, and it's the thing at the top of my mind whenever making a decision, whenever voting on an issue, whenever going through a line of 10 charges. How does this go with the governing documents? Does this make sense? Is this in violation? And it's a really difficult thing to do, but I'm proud of what I've done so far. And it would be a blessing to be able to continue serving for another semester and potentially even through when I graduate in May 2020. I thank Trevor again for nominating me in the first place. It's been a privilege so far, and I hope to have that opportunity moving forward. Any questions?
Questions for the nominee, Danya?
Yeah, it's been very, like, I'm not going to be a lawyer in my life, but it's a very enjoyable experience to be able to like look at the governing documents. I applied for this position probably at the height of the Kavanaugh hearings and all that. It's interesting because you have to it's a good test of yourself and being able to put aside your personal opinions. Because like obviously, like I know some people in this room, and like I've had to play out in my head like how would I handle it if something ever came before me. And so it's a really good experience. And I enjoyed the hearing that we had last month. I thought it was rather fair, professional. We got to the truth. We asked plenty of questions of both sides, and it's a good thing. And I obviously have some commitments, but like this is the kind of commitment that I can do because it only happens 3-4 times a year. And you saw like when we first got the charges from you, Danya, we immediately moved within 3 or 4 days to have a hearing. So we adjusted our schedules. We recognized the importance of the situation, and we took action. And I thought we had a really good process that happened.
Sean?
Hi, so just to go off what I asked in CRP, through your time in J-Board, what have you noticed in terms of the judicial process, and are there any improvements that you think that should be made?
I've noticed, especially with Brian, that it's a very collaborative process. Like under the governing documents, like he has the right to accept charges, but I always appreciate it when before making that decision, he talks to the rest of the members to make sure that we all have some input and like he considers us as like advisors in that process. Obviously, we don't have a vote in the process, but I appreciate that. And like I feel like if there was a chair that just like blocked us out of that process, got the email, made that decision on their own, and then told us that there was going to be a hearing that had to happen or opinion that had to be written. I don't know if I would like that as much. And so maybe if there was a process where like other associate members had an ability to accept charges, if there was like the majority of the rest of the J board like wanted to accept charges over the current chair. Obviously, we don't have that problem because we have that collaborative environment. But I'm just thinking in terms of future J boards, like I feel like it's important that we have like that collaboration where the other members have a say.
Other questions? Seeing none, thank you. If you want to leave in the room. Danya? Okay, yeah. There's a second for a unanimous consent of reconfirmation. Is there any objection to the reconfirmation? Hearing none, he is reconfirmed. Okay, moving to referendum 1819-001, a referendum on alcohol sales at sporting events. Would the sponsor like to speak on the referendum?
Yeah, so Leila, who arrived a minute ago, is vice president, obviously, and she sits on the board of trustees committee on athletics. Yep. And something that came out of their meeting is that they might change university policy to allow alcohol to be sold at sporting events because it would attract more people to the events, which builds alumni engagement, community, perhaps more engaged alumni are more likely to give money back to the school, and so on and so forth. So the Board of Trustees wanted to hear what students have to say. So a result that came out of that meeting is that they want a referendum, and that is this referendum. So I can answer any questions. Leila can also speak to this as well, and I have a few amendments to make after we're finished with that.
Okay. Questions for the sponsor, Danya?
Just like out of curiosity, as of now, like, what is that alcohol policy? Is it like on campus, it's staff, right? And then like people over 21 can drink, or is it not? Is it completely dry?
I don't know what the level of moisture is. But the policy, I think the policy is that if everyone in a space, like at a particular event, is over 21 and they get permission from the university to have alcohol, that they can. I think that's it. But that's like not entirely relevant. This only applies to sporting events, and it looks like Leila can provide more clarity on this.
I can end it with a question, Brad.
Sorry.
Yeah. So basically, at the last Board of Trustees athletics committee meeting, we just discussed like how it could positively affect athletics if we were to open up the discussion around like changing this policy. They're not spearheading it, and like I'm kind of like the person who's brought up the conversation, if anything. But kind of the reason why we've been talking about this is because like through my work with athletics, like working on events and just like hearing the concerns from the committee around like attendance and like sponsorships and community engagement and things of that sort. Something that I feel like is a small thing, not a small thing to adjust, but something they could adjust to like allow for greater engagement and greater attendance and just like overall benefit athletics is to change this policy. A lot of universities have been shifting towards doing this. Peer institutions like Boston College has done this, and like at GW games, if you hit a certain level of sponsorship, you can drink at their games. And so since we are a university that's like shifted towards being a DAM campus, which is essentially like if you're 21 and over, you can house alcohol in your dorm room. I think that like we should open the conversation up like if you're 21 and over, if you're a senior at AU, or if you're an alumni coming back to the game, like why can't you purchase a beer or like a glass of wine or something like that? Because like it would keep people on campus and it would keep people engaged in the AU community to be allowed to do these things instead of feeling like, oh, you have to go to like a ECA game or like you have to go to like a NAC game or something like that to like have a relaxed, like fun game with your friends. And it feels like there's a window of opportunity to like boost that community feel here at AU. That's why I'm engaging your thoughts on this and why I kind of want to have students say this rather than just AUSG, because as we know, like the student voice collectively is more powerful. And this would be a great way to signal to them. This is something I've shared with them that we were considering doing because, and they liked it. They were like, okay, if this gauges student opinion and students come out strong for this, and like it is something like worth considering. And if alumni come out and say that they also support this, it is something worth considering. And so it's kind of like our way of taking a step forward and like having that conversation. I can answer questions too.
Jacob?
I have two questions for the sponsor, Bobby. My first question is, would you agree that referendums are, while not binding, are an important tool to express student sentiment? And my second question is, what were some of the other adjustments you wanted to make?
Okay, so yeah, referenda are important, even if they are binding. They are binding when we're amending the Constitution, but that's a different bit. And then for the amendments, just one thing clerical is that this needs to be labeled as the 14th Undergraduate Summit. And Leila sent me a few modifications for the question itself, just to be a little bit more clear, I think. And then I think the speaker added the last clause after I submitted it, but OIT no longer administers elections, so we'll have to take that out. But we can get there when we go into discussion.
Other questions? Sean?
Just a question for the sponsor. To ensure that events issue guarantee that if the referendum was to pass and if this was also agreed upon by alumni relations that you would work with any administration to implement a measure to ensure that minors do not illegally obtain alcohol at these sporting events?
I'm not going to personally commit that much to it, because I'm mainly acting as like a vehicle to introduce this into the Senate. I think, it's a good idea, and that I'm sure that people who sell the alcohol at the sporting event will be carding people. But I would also note that it's not outside like the realm of the usual that minors have alcohol at AU. So it's not a giant concern for me.
The time for questioning has elapsed. I'm going to rule it dilatory because questions also get to discussion anyway. So that's what we're moving next to.
And you can ask questions.
Yeah. So if there's no other motions, then we'll move to discussion. Tanya.
Okay, so this is kind of going off the top question, but this is specifically so I was wondering more about how to control that minors won't have access to alcohol because sometimes it does occur. And also has there been a consideration that only alumni could be allowed to purchase alcohol just to make it so that there is no liability to the school, because that's a huge deal, the liability of selling alcohol. So this referendum and us making this step isn't us creating the policy. Yeah. This is us telling the university that we would be interested in them looking into these policies, and they have plenty of compliance officers, athletics have a compliance officer, I'm sure girls office has too. And so it would be in their control of how they decide to distribute, and I've had conversations with them where they're like, okay, well, the concession stand wouldn't be a viable place to do it, so we have to create a different area, and this area would be closed off, and they're looking into different ways to do it, but we wouldn't be controlling that, and it would be more in athletics and university policy to look into that. I know that this is clearly something that would be cost or concern for them, so I know that they would probably be very diligently looking into it.
Jacob?
Yeah, I just want to say I fully intend on supporting this referendum. I think while I understand some of the concerns that were brought up, it is not our job to oversee that. That's the job of the people who will be implementing the policy. This is aimed at gauging how the students would be, how they would feel if alcohol was sold at sporting events. And I'll say that I know I personally would really enjoy that, so we're just trying to 21. I want to say that I think that that's a separate thing. I think this is just gauging support. I always am a big supporter of putting the question to students. So I fully intend to be supporting this referendum.
Hi, Val.
Also, just a side note, there are already, I don't want to go into weeds of alcohol policy for the EU. So what you all have been describing as residence hall alcohol policy, but there are specific places on campus that are allowed to sell, to provide alcohol for special events. So for example, this year McBride event that KP hosted with SPA, there was alcohol served with people over 21. So this isn't a radical thing, just so you guys know. Yeah, on top of that, the chain of command in which this would go would be I don't know for sure, because I think they still would have to figure that out, but our initial step is making this a referendum, opening up the conversation, doing this this isn't referendums we've done in the past. We're not asking students to give more money or anything like that. We're asking do they support the university looking at changing policy? So hopefully it won't be a controversial one, and there won't be a full campaign around it, just providing information to gauge their interest. And then from there, we'll be working with alumni to gauge alumni interests and potential alumni to see how they feel about it, since they're the other constituencies that would be affected. And then from there, we would hope that campus life would look into it, and then trustees, and then make its way up for a while. But yeah, we're not changing the policy ourselves.
Bobby?
I'm going to strike the last clause.
Is there a second?
Second.
Is there discussion on this amendment?
I'll just explain my reasoning. Is that elections from now on, or foreseeable future, moving on a new platform called Campus Labs, and that is administered by student activities, not OIT. So that's that.
Further discussion? Seeing none, we'll move to vote. All those in favor of this amendment say yay.
Yeah.
All those opposed say nay. And the chair, the ayes have it. Bobby?
I move for another amendment to the question, referendum question itself, where it says increase attendance. And so.
Thank you.
Third line.
Yeah, increase attendance, I would like to say increase student and alumni attendance. That is a suggestion Leo gave me. And then after that attendance, there's a comma, and it says community spirit. Can we change community spirit to athletic engagement? Athletics plural engagement. All right, and then once you get that, there's two more things. And we have, where it says, would you support the university changing its alcohol policy? Can we changing its alcohol policy to revisiting its policies?
So wait. Say that again?
So in the last sentence, changing its alcohol policy, strike that and replace it with revisiting its policies. And then, yeah, that's it. Oh, yeah, forgot that one. After sponsorship, in the second to last sentence, but opportunities.
Sponsorship opportunities.
Yes. Yeah, these are all things that, we suggested.
Is that the wording you wish to see? Is there a second?
Second.
I hear a second. Discussion on this amendment. Seeing none, we'll move to vote. All those in favor of this amendment say yay.
Yay.
All those opposed say nay. And the chair, the ayes have it. Danya? I will take that as clerical. Other discussion? Seeing none. We will move to vote on referendum 18-19-001 without objection. All those in favor of referendum 18-19-001 as it is written, say yay.
Yay.
All those opposed say nay. And pin chair, the ayes have it, and the referendum is passed. All right, moving to resolution 18-19-004. Resolution to overturn the judicial board suspension of Comptroller Giselle Gladden. Would the sponsor like to speak on this resolution?
Yeah, a few things. So first about the way that this fits into our authority in the judicial register, which is the government document that sets out how the judicial board works. Article 3, Section 4, subsection 7 says that the undergraduate senate has final authority on all sections ordered by the judicial board. So this is us exercising our authority under that provision over the section that came out on Friday in the continuance of judicial opinion 14.002, which is what Brian spoke about earlier. That suspends Giselle again and calls for her impeachment officially. So then that's like where this is coming from. There's also a question about this being a resolution. Now, the judicial register doesn't say any kind of form that this authority takes when the undergraduate senate exercises it. A similar situation happened at the end of the 12th Senate, where the case director was fired and the undergraduate senate exercised its authority to overturn that firing and put him back in office. Now, when that happened last year, there wasn't any legislation attached to that. It was just a vote. I decided to write this on paper so that it's easier for everybody to understand. We all know what's going on, rather than just like a motion to overturn it, which is more abstract. I chose a resolution as opposed to a bill or any other kind of legislation that we have, because the judicial register says that the undergraduate senate has this authority. It doesn't say that it needs to go to a committee or that it needs presidential signature or overriding veto or any of that. It just says a senate vote, and a resolution is the only kind of legislation that has only a senate vote. Now, in terms of the actual content of Giselle's suspension and call for impeachment, the justification for that from the Judicial Board on Friday was that the fiscal report for February wasn't done. It's right here and now. It was done on March 1st instead of February 28th. I think when we're considering like that we all do a not like totally ideal job of everything that's laid out in the government documents, we have to decide like what is the best course of action to go forward based on that knowledge. And I think considering that this fiscal report is in and it was done on March 1st for the month of February, which I think is entirely reasonable, and that all the other things that were because of the first opinion about Giselle, updating the website, coming to Senate meetings, and so on and so forth, are addressed or like currently being addressed. And everything else is going fine. And if we overturn the suspension, I believe Giselle would still be on the original probation from 14.002. With all of that in consideration, I think like we don't need to extend this suspension, and we certainly don't need to do anything about impeachment. So, any questions?
Danya, questions?
Okay, we're gonna have a discussion.
Yes. Questions, Sean?
So this resolution overturns the current suspension, but not the previous suspension laid out in the prior judicial board decision, correct?
Yeah, if you go to the resolve clauses, it refers to this continuation opinion, and it says that the suspension is overturned, and it also specifically says that it doesn't touch anything from the original opinion.
Questions? Seeing none, we'll move to discussion. Danya.
Okay, so as Madam Chair, obviously, I was the one who brought about this case in the beginning, but now I support Bobby's resolution because Giselle did come and report to us, and she did have the financial report from February, and she did discuss the finances of February in her report. And I don't think that as like looking at it as an accountability perspective, yes, it was technically due before March 1st, which I'm not going to deny, but I think that since it was delivered on March 1st and it did exist before, because she had already reported to us about the finances in February, I think that it would be counterintuitive to suspend the comptroller right now, especially given the fact that there's so little time left in the term to begin with. And I think that the probation should continue. And yeah, and I would definitely not support an impeachment at all. I don't think that is appropriate now.
Jacob?
I just want to say I so look forward to our bylaws commission because I think this has been so silly. We continually keep getting in the way of the comptroller being able to do their work, and this is now the third time in a row where something like this has happened, like the third year in a row. I'm going to support this, of course. I just think that I so look forward to us actually being able to make the job easier, better, and more accountable for the students because we keep getting in our own way. It's just so silly.
Bobby?
Yeah, not on this resolution, but on the bylaws commission. Sean and Giselle, I will ask you to fill out the doodle poll. And for the rest of you who already filled out the doodle poll, if you can make any like stretch of your availability, that would be nice, because we don't have a lot of overlap so far. But if not, I understand everybody is busy. So that's just that.
Current other discussion on this resolution? Seeing none, we'll move to vote without objection. All those in favor of adopting resolution 1819-004 say yay.
Yay.
All those opposed say nay. In the opinion of the chair, the yeas have it, and the resolution is adopted. Okay. Any further new business for the Senate? Seeing none, we'll move to old business. Seeing no old business, we'll move to public comment. Any member of the public wishing to speak at this time? Seeing none, we'll move to good of the order. Any executives for the good of the order? Val?
Hey everyone, I said everything I needed to say during my presentation, but the first thing I said during my first presentation to you all at the undergraduate senate is that I expected you all to keep it in check, and I would also try my best to keep you all in check. I appreciate all of the hard questions you all asked today and your engagement, but just remember, engagement with the student body goes beyond a Sunday Senate meeting. A lot of you have been talking around bias, have been talking about college affordability, this and that. And I honestly have been quite disappointed in the level of engagement or attendance in a lot of the actual meetings and events that go on around this. And I know all of our lives are busy, but just a reminder, like, it's beyond a Sunday showing up and stating your opinion.
Other executives for the good of the order? Leela?
Also, just for anyone like thinking about running for keyboard positions, make sure to reach out to us, grab coffee, we can have discussion about our position.
Other executives? Alex?
I hope everyone had a great weekend. Midterms are coming up, so remember this all.
Other executives? Seeing none, we'll move to Senate. Danya?
Everyone a happy spring break, since we won't be meeting for the next week. I look forward to all the work we'll do after spring break, and I really hope we'll keep the good work, pass more bills and help with the ideas and hang it out in the end of the year.
Sean?
I just wanted to thank Val for the classroom bias, and I thought it was a great event. I was happy to attend the presentation, all the discussions that happened there. So thank you very much for the support, Raphael, and everyone who talked with that on.
Other senators for the good of the order? All right. One, make sure, like Val said, try to be as engaged as possible for your constituents' purposes. Two, good luck on midterms. Enjoy spring break. And I guess I'll just put this out there now because I got to start thinking about it. I, along with the other e-board members, or some of the e-board members, will not be here after, May. So start thinking about my position as well, which is completely separate from the elections debacle. So reach out if you're interested in taking that over. Besides that, enjoy your week, try to stay warm, and we are adjourned.